Hello, everyone. Here we are for another daily dose of the Worth the Fight podcast. This will be more like a mini dose or a medium dose. I want to dive into our psychedelic past. This is something that I've given a lot of thought to. It's a fascinating concept. We'll cover I believe that we're in the third wave here. The first wave was our indigenous, and it's even posited by scholars like Brian Muraresco, the author of the Immortality Key. I'm going to try to get him on the podcast here. It would be amazing to have a conversation. I met him at an event about a year and a half ago in DC, and I would love to share his wisdom with all of you. But my understanding is that there's a lot of belief, or his position, that perhaps psychedelics were at the root of all major religions. It's sure looking, the evidence is starting to shape up and to show that perhaps there were psychedelic beers, psychedelic wines, and these ancient artifacts. Of course, these is thousands of years ago, but is something that I feel intuitively is truth, and that this emergence here, the third wave, is not an aberration. We are coming home to our evolutionary past and to our roots. So let's do a deep dive around this is the third wave, the present day psychedelic revolution or psychedelic renaissance. And then there was the second wave, which was the 60s and 70s. Actually started in the 40s when Albert Hofmann, the Swiss chemist, discovered LSD. Inadvertently, accidentally, he dosed himself. It's a very, very potent molecule. It got through his gloves while he was in his laboratory, and he was the first person to have an LSD journey in 1943. Ironically, the same year when the atomic bomb was created, the atomic bomb for the mind was also created, 1943. And there's some resources that are really, really, and I'm sharing this because there's a lot of new people coming to my channel on YouTube, my podcast, my Substack, and I want to break down how we got to the present day and to give people some context, because the past is the best representation of the future. And if we can learn the mistakes from yesteryear, we can make the adjustments here in our present moment during these precarious times, so we can ensure that we have a better outcome than potentially we did in the 60s or 70s. And that's debatable whether that was a good or a bad outcome. It just is at this point. So again, 1943, Albert Hofmann, Swiss chemist, discovers LSD. This, with Sandoz Pharmaceuticals, got circulated into our collective. Michael Pollan wrote about this in depth in his book, How to Change Your Mind. Wonderful book. And there's a Netflix docuseries, How to Change Your Mind, as well. Highly, highly recommended. It is an olive branch for anyone who is interested in the backstory. Michael Pollan is one of the esteemed elders in our culture. He is a professor of journalism at UC Berkeley. And I believe he also is at Harvard as well. And New York Times bestseller. He's got 7 or 8 or 9 bestsellers at this point in time. And he's a respected elder who did a wonderful job, kind of myth busting what I affectionately call the bullshit incorporated limiting belief scarcity programs, the lies and limits from yesteryear, because there was a lot of lies and limits. And but it happened on both sides. That there was people that were, Timothy Leary comes to mind as a professor that was evangelizing these molecules, telling everyone to tune in, turn on, and drop out. And, there was a counterculture that was created. And, he was kind of the pariah of the time. But, again, an ex-Harvard professor that was telling people to not fight in the wars. It became very, very, it got all the way to the top Richard Nixon said that Timothy Leary was the most dangerous man in America. Believe that. That's wild to think that that's the case. And there was this, again, a counterculture movement, and young people did not want to fight in the wars. And this was the first time that, and our elders really had no idea what was happening, because this was all new. This was LSD and psilocybin were new molecules. Again, LSD was created in 1943, and psilocybin, I believe, was discovered in the late 50s, the mid to late 50s. There was kind of folklore that there was mushrooms, these psychedelic experiences where people were having these divine experiences in Mexico, and that led people to go there and to find the mushroom, and then ultimately to bring that back into our culture. And the party was shut down in 1971 with the Controlled Substances Act, where the federal government, of course, this got political, like most everything does get political at some point. And these were labeled Schedule 1 drugs, highly addictive with no therapeutic value. The science is disproving that right now in real time. We have a massive decrim movement that is happening, first kicked off with Denver in 2020. Oregon was the first state to do this, to have a ballot at a state level. So they've legalized psilocybin therapy. And I believe Colorado, that was 2020 as well. And then Colorado at a state level legalized psilocybin therapy. And just this last year, New Mexico legalized psilocybin therapy as well. Australia legalized psilocybin and MDMA therapy. I believe that was a few years ago. And the Czech Republic just legalized psilocybin therapy that was going into effect on January 1 of 2026. So those are some data points of the shifting that's happening. And of course, we have a thriving decrim movement where these medicines aren't legalized, but they've been decriminalized. And then that started again in Denver, and Washington, D.C. followed, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, Seattle, the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland. There's a handful of others, and it's my understanding that there's legislation in 14 states. So I believe that the floodgates are going to open here in the coming months, the coming years, and we're going to see more reform. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're done with the alcohol. We're drinking less alcohol than ever before. The neuroscience community is calling it what it is. It's a highly carcinogenic neurotoxin, so we're not drinking the alcohol like we used to. And we're fed up with the pills, and we're seeing through the pharmaceutical companies, what I again affectionately call bullshit incorporated, limiting belief scarcity programs. And I believe wholeheartedly that our bodies are infinitely wise, and when we give ourselves the right conditions, our body they'll heal. Our minds will heal, our hearts will heal, our souls will heal. And psychedelics can be a big part of that journey. It's estimated that 10 million Americans microdosed in 2025. This is mushrooming in our collective. It's a very, very exciting time. And on that note, around psilocybin, there's also another wonderful documentary that came out, I believe, in 2019 called Fantastic Fungi. Highly recommended if you're curious about microdosing or macrodosing, and just a fascinating documentary about psilocybin and the fungi kingdom. And it's, again, very, very thought-provoking about our relationship to the fungi kingdom. And yeah, again, a very compelling documentary. So again, we have the first wave was the ancients, perhaps the ancient Greeks. Before then, the indigenous, which were thought to have been working with psychedelics for maybe thousands of years, divination and ceremony. And, it's Brian Moresco, again, the author of The Immortality Key, posits that it was the repression from the Catholic Church around 400, 390 or so, where all the books were burned and this knowledge was lost. But obviously it was kept alive, and here we are. It's emerging in our culture right now. The third wave that we're in right now started with Dr. Rick Strassman. He's a University of New Mexico professor who is kind of the unsung hero of this movement. I had him on the Worth the Fight podcast, I believe episode number 76. It was a sacred honor to have that conversation with Dr. Strassman and to push the edges. He's the author of DMT, the spirit molecule. So that was ayahuasca meant so much to me on my path and journey and healing. Geez, I wrote a 308-page book, worththefightbook.org. You can get a copy of that. And, to push these edges with him and to share his wisdom was, again, such a special honor. And he started in the mid 90s to work. He got a DEA exemption to work with DMT, and he has some really, really interesting research that, of course, that he shares in the DMT, the spirit molecule. And I highly recommend that documentary as well. Very fascinating. I think the most watched psychedelic documentary of all time. And then we all know, and I talk about the research that started at Johns Hopkins in the early 2000s, where they were researching how psilocybin could occasion a spiritual experience, which was wild. I think that was the first clinical trials where they were testing to see if that were the case, and they certainly found that was the case. And then there's been expansive research done at Johns Hopkins and NYU for psychedelics for end-of-life anxiety, certainly psilocybin, and addiction and trauma. And right now, there's more psychedelic research happening in 2026 than there's ever has been in the history of humankind. So there's a wonderful opportunity here that we're learning more all out towards this edge. And the story is shifting in real time about what these medicines are and how to work with them responsibly. I wrote, again, a 308-page book where that was my earnest intention. My heartfelt intention is to write Worth the Fight to help people that were coming onto this path, because I struggled so much with my high-dose journeys and how do I integrate that journey into the day-to-day, and how do I pay forward the grace of plant medicine healing. I mean, I had to travel to Costa Rica in 2020 or 2015 for my healing. Why did I have to leave the country? Why do our veterans still, it's 2026, have to leave the country to heal? Yes, they're starting to do some healing ceremonies in Oregon and I presume Colorado. But why are these medicines illegal? This was the only thing that worked for my healing, for my depression, for the trauma, for the childhood sexual trauma that was garbling up my nervous system, that was at the root of my depression and my dis-ease and my addictions, my drinking, my materialism-itis, my overall disenchantment with life. And, these medicines opened up my heart, allowed me to go into these traumas from yesteryear, to feel all the feels, to let that energy move through, and to liberate the energy of trauma into the energy of life. And I'm 46 years old. I've never felt better. I'm living my dream life in service to our collective awakening. And I'm just, again, inviting possibility of what can be possible. If we lean into our edge, we feel all the feels, and we embrace the practices as well. I've been beating this drum for the last decade. While I was traveling back in 2015 and 2016 and 2017, I did my 18-month around the world trip, and I was doing a lot of deep healing, and I just saw a lot of people that were ungrounded. And I was thinking, whoa, this is going to be a big challenge. And we need to have strong framework in place so people can get the most out of these medicines to heal, to be happy, to be strong, and ultimately to do the work that they're here to do. So that was my motivation for writing Worth the Fight. Again, we'd love the support. If you pick a copy up, it's almost 7 years later, but I still believe that this is evergreen. I was a little bit early to the party, so to speak, and that this is just now making it into our collective. I mean, it has been for the last decade, but I have conversations all the time with people that haven't had a psychedelic experience. And so this awareness systems take a long time to change. Dr. Hardy's words, that the system is designed to defend the system, come to mind. And I don't think anyone was attributed with that quote, but it's so true. And while I thought that everything would change, we all thought that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy would be legalized, would be a legal, approved cure for post-traumatic stress disorder. We thought that back in 2021. Here we are, it's 2026, it hasn't been. So these systems are hard to disrupt. There's a lot of money at stake. Again, Bullshit Incorporated, the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want to give up their share. They don't want to give up their market share. They don't want to give up their yachts. They don't want to give up their Aspen homes, and so on. Lake houses and all that stuff. There's just, again, so much money, and that's a deep dive I could go into deeper, and I will certainly in time. And I wrote about that again in my book. What is different now? We're here in 2026. And why do I believe that things will have a different outcome? Flow science. Again, we've talked a lot about peak human performance, optimized health, the work with Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler at Stealing Fire, and just how this is tied to peak human performance, peak performance. And this isn't a, tune in, turn on, and drop out. We're creating a new culture. We don't have time to create a counterculture, and we can learn from yesteryear. There was a really powerful documentary that I'd watched, or an interview where I watched Terence McKenna, who was a thought leader from yesteryear, and Ram Dass, two thought leaders. They were in a Prague cafe, I believe in the early 90s. They were kind of rehashing what went wrong. How did we miss the mark? Why did the psychedelic revolution of the 60s get shut down? And Ram Dass Terence McKenna had asked Ram Dass that, and he gave a very thoughtful response. And I thought this was so striking. And Ram Dass had said, idealism and a sense of lurking righteousness. And he took a few minutes to really sit there and kind of sit with that question. And that was the problem of yesteryear, is that people got dogmatic, they got idealistic, and they were out of touch with reality. They were out of touch with their brothers and sisters. And it was repulsive to the elders, and they didn't understand it. And they said, let's shut this party down and let's make these drugs, let's demonize them and make them illegal. And so we can learn from that, from yesteryear, and make the adjustments now. And to walk this path with humility, to be stewards for the sacred medicines, knowing that the masses are struggling with mental health. We're in a mental health crisis. We're in a loneliness epidemic. Addiction numbers are soaring. Anxiety, depression, PTSD. We're in a suicide epidemic and crisis, not just with our veteran community, but I'm hearing that in men as well. There's a mental health, and I presume women as well. And it's a tough time right now. So everyone's hurting, everyone's struggling, and these medicines can help. They can help people error correct. They can help people wake up. They can help people feel all the feels and move through those traumas that are at the root. Again, per Dr. Gabor Mate, to liberate the energy of trauma into the energy of life. It's his directive that he believes nearly all dis-ease is a byproduct of unhealed trauma. I believe the same thing. That's a big, powerful part of my ethos. That's why I also believe the degree to which we lean into our darkness, the pain, the adversity, the trauma, the deep fight of our life is the very same degree to which we can stand in love in our light, so that when we liberate that energy, we free that energy, we can have more clarity, more hope, more vision for the path ahead. If you have any questions about this or anything else I'm posting here on YouTube or on my podcast, please do reach out. I'm here to serve. I'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions in the comments below. If this resonates and you think might add value to a loved one, please share. I'd love to, again, hear your thoughts and impressions. And of course, I'd also love the support of my book, Worth the Fight. You can find that at worththefightbook.org. So much love to all of you. Love and peace. I'm just going to do a quick little look here to make sure we didn't miss anything. And if we did miss anything, we'll come back and record another one. So if there's anything that I did miss, any key events, that's a great question here too. If there's any key events, I'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions. I'm just sharing my best 20 minutes. Again, this is a mini dose, medium dose of the third wave, the three waves, our past, the 60s and 70s, and here we are in present day. So hopefully there'll be more shifts, more changes. Hopefully MDMA-assisted psychotherapy will be approved for post-traumatic stress disorder. That was a big blow to the movement back in 2024. The FDA doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and they voted against that. So that is something, if there's one point that I didn't mention, again, that was something we thought would happen in 2021, and here we are in 2026. Our veterans are dropping like flies to suicide, and we have a scientifically proven methodology and healing tool, 3 MDMA-assisted psychotherapy sessions with 9 non-drug psychotherapy sessions. 71% of our veterans, or 71% of the participants, were no longer qualified for post-traumatic stress disorder after the care. So this is diametrically opposed to the pill-a-day model, again, to Bullshit Incorporated. And I've gotten kind of back into this thread, but this does feel really important. And I'm hopeful that this can be approved, and that perhaps the administration that's a little bit more psychedelic friendly, with RFK having one of his 6 children. Apparently RFK's wife killed herself a decade ago, and one of his 6 children had a profound healing with ayahuasca, his youngest, I believe. And so he's seen it firsthand, how this can help a young person that had anger and pain in his heart and trauma, unprocessed trauma, to heal and be more grounded, and how it shifted his energy. And of course, he's very abreast to what's happening in our veteran community. And so who knows, we'll see. But either way, we're going to keep that slow march towards the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, and knowing that we're very early on in this movement. We've got 3 out of the 50 states. And it's my earnest hope and prayer that these floodgates will open here soon. We can have more healing, more awareness, more collaboration, more unity, more conscious business, more kindness, all that. So much love to all of you. Love and peace. See you tomorrow. Thank you.